Hello, welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto. Brian passed along a story to me. Said, Steve, I don't know if you've seen this one yet or not, and I hadn't. Again, if you see stories in the news regarding laws or law breakers, crimes, anything, send it my way. The more the merrier. So this is out of the Citrus County Chronicle. I believe that's in Florida. And the story says that Judge Richard Howard has got a new rule. And the headline, in fact, says Howard's new rule: cell phone goes off in court, you go in a cell. Okay? So your cell phone could now land you in a cell. Circuit Court Judge Richard Rick Howard, who is the administrative judge for the Citrus County Courthouse in Inverness, has been announcing a change to his courtroom's policy on cell phones and other electronic devices during the start of his hearings this week. Now, this story came out a few months ago, but it's recent. And it deserves more attention because we've all been places where cell phones went off and they shouldn't have. Depending where you are, that can be a problem. If Howard or his bailiffs hear an electronic device going off during hearings, their owner will be detained until the end of the docket, the judge said. Howard's prior punishment for such an interruption was to have bailiffs confiscate the device and return it at the end of Howard's courtroom duties. Howard said Tuesday in court that a woman's cell phone went off on Monday as she was in a courtroom gallery, and the judge held her in contempt. She spent 5 to 6 hours in the county jail, Howard said to court attendees. If you want that, leave your cell phone on. Now, notice he does say it has to go off during a hearing. So if you walk into the courtroom, nothing's happening. Apparently, if your cell phone goes off, it's not that big of a deal. But I've been in court before, and I've seen a cell phone go off, or I've heard a cell phone go off, or I've heard something go off in a courtroom when it shouldn't have. And I've seen judges, I've seen bailiffs walk out before a court even starts and say, everyone, please shut your cell phones off. I've still seen one go off. I've also seen signs taped to the courtroom doors. Electronic devices must be turned off. Cell phones still go off. I've seen courthouses where they say you cannot bring those things in the building at all. Okay, now here's the thing. That seems extreme to me. And I know some courthouses where they say everyone's got to leave their electronic devices in their cars, where they'll say, okay, but it's okay for attorneys. We'll let attorneys bring them in. And attorneys will still get lectured, where the person who's doing the metal detector will actually say, you can bring that in if you're an attorney, but you better not let that thing go off in a courtroom. Okay? But some people have asked me, say, Steve, what's with these judges who think they're God? Well, I have news for you. In the courtroom, a judge is God. And I know people say, Steve, come on, they're just people wearing a black robe. They are. But the law, the courts, the Constitution, everything that talks about how important different things are in our society. We have an executive branch, which is a president or a governor in a state. We have the legislative branch, which is the Congress in Washington, or in my case, in Lansing. And of course, you have the judicial branch, the Supreme Court and the lower courts, different jurisdictions. And the courts are an important part of that structure. They're just as important as any one of the other two branches. It's 3 branches of government. Each one is important. Checks and balances and all that. And our courts have, since time immemorial, allowed judges to run their courts as they see fit within reason. Okay, so I told you the story about the crazy judge in Brighton, Michigan, who got in trouble and got kicked off the bench. Now she's being put on trial for some things she did. And obviously, there are limits to what they can do. But judges are given a broad discretion in how they run their courtrooms. And that often means that they can say things like, but I don't want cameras in here. Or if you bring cameras in, there's going to be certain rules you're going to follow, such as don't photograph jurors, okay? Or if, there's a lot of different situations. If there's children involved in the proceedings, don't photograph the children. And again, judges are also allowed to do things that make the courtroom run more smoothly. And one of those is to not have cell phones going off during the proceedings. And I've seen it happen before, where 2 sides are making an argument in front of the judge and everyone's paying attention. All of a sudden, the cell phone goes off over here. And it's so totally inappropriate. And I don't feel sorry for somebody who gets thrown in jail for their cell phone going off or being held in contempt and being held for a little while if they've been told, everyone shut your cell phone off. Now, if you don't know how to turn your own cell phone off, you might have other problems that go beyond whether or not you're going to get held in contempt of court. Okay? And I admit I have a cell phone. I've had a cell phone for many, many years. And I admit there was a time or two where I've had a phone that I thought was shut off or I thought was muted or whatever, but it never happened to me in court. You know why? Because when I'm in a courtroom, I shut the thing off. I don't want to run that risk. And the whole point is that the judge is trying to hear cases. Every case that appears in front of him is important. Every litigant that appears in front of him, every attorney that appears in front of him, every party that appears, gets the same respect and attention focused on them when they get up here. So you don't want people back here, playing tiddlywinks, look it up, playing with their cell phones, making noises, beepers, pagers, any of that stuff going off. You don't want that going on. I can tell you right now, there was a judge in Oakland County, Michigan, whose bailiff would come out 5 minutes before the judge did. And you'd actually say, cell phones off, reading material put away. Meaning that if you had your case out, your case file, and you were reading your own case file, you're fine. But if you pulled out a newspaper and opened it up like you're reading the Wall Street Journal waiting for your case to get called, the bailiff would actually come over and say, excuse me, put this away. Because it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful. And also you hear someone crackling paper back there can be annoying. I can tell you I've seen people clipping their fingernails in a courtroom before. Click, click, click. And it's one of those things where I'm watching going, I'm wondering if the judge can hear that. I'm wondering if the bailiff can hear that. People don't think these things through, okay? And it's unfortunate because most of this stuff is not done by the actual litigants or people who come to court. It's often done by the attorneys. Being honest here. And what really is the problem is some attorneys get so comfortable in the courtroom that they forget that they're supposed to be holding it in the high esteem that they do. And I've been in courts before. I've been there so often. I know the clerk or I know the judge or, whatever. And I have to remind myself just to make sure, by the way, you know that man personally, but he's got his robe on right now. He's a judge. Yes, Your Honor. Absolutely, Your Honor. And, outside the building, I might not tack on so many Your Honors, but I'll still say it to him. But, so the judge who says, hey, look, turn your cell phone off. That thing goes off. I'm going to hold you in contempt. This is actually not as crazy as you'd think. It made national headlines, but, I can tell you that I've talked before about how courtrooms are set up. I've done a couple different videos talking about this, the mechanics of a courtroom. And, the judge sits up on the bench. There's often a court reporter here and a witness box here and a jury box on one side and two tables down in front for the parties to sit at. And usually behind the tables is a little wall. And sometimes it's referred to as the bar. It is actually the bar that separates the gallery from the litigants. And it's usually the case that in a formal setting, you don't pass through that bar without being invited. Okay? And so your case is called, you can come on up. Okay? And I've actually seen it before where that bar had a flat surface on it. And I remember being in a courtroom once and an attorney who was a little bit too comfortable walked in with a big file, which why on earth a file would be that thick, I don't know. But he had a big, thick file and he put it on the bar and he started walking away from it. And the bailiff goes, excuse me. And the attorney looked and he goes, if you leave it there, I'm going to shoot it off. And the guy looked at the bailiff to see if the bailiff was joking, and the bailiff was not laughing. The bailiff had a gun. I don't think he's going to really shoot it off. The attorney went back there and he picked it up, carried it away. There's certain things you do. You don't put your feet up on the bench in front of you in a courtroom either. You can do that in a movie theater if you want to be an idiot, but don't do it in a courtroom, And, I remember having students in class wear baseball caps in class. And we had a class that met in a mock courtroom. And I said, I want to pretend that this is a courtroom, guys. Take your hats off. And I'd always have one or two go, what are you talking about? And I'm going, you better get used to it because you aren't wearing that hat in a courtroom. And there's certain things you just do. And I know some of you guys are going, hey, it's old school, Steve. That's real old school. Yeah, once in a while, old school stuff is cool, okay? It's cool to be old school. I think Huey Lewis had a song about that, but I could be wrong. If he doesn't, he does now. So there you go. Judge Richard Howard in Citrus County Circuit Court. If your cell phone goes off, you go sit in the cell for a while to think about what you've done. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.